Hello, 1301. I wanted to go over the Walker Percy theme sheet. Some of this might be a rehash of what I've said before, but ultimately, of the 5 essays we read, this might be my favorite because it's kind of free riff, stream of consciousness for me, too. It's about me telling stories. The bullet point might be the same, but when I see that bullet point as I read, maybe I go off on another tangent, maybe I tell another story, and I think that's one of his points. But I wanted to go over the theme sheet. At the beginning, I go over the sections. Again, the first section is at the Grand Canyon. Injured patient wakes up in the Grand Canyon nursing home. It's a new perspective on life. So if you've been in a coma, whatever your life is like, if you're in a coma and you wake up and you see the Grand Canyon, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Maybe your wife's face, if you've been in a coma, is the most beautiful thing in the world. He talks about Cardenas was the first explorer to claim the Grand Canyon. My note asks, is the experience better for him? It might be, but it also depends on your perspective. Are you pessimistic? I can never have as good a time at the Grand Canyon, in New York, at the Dallas Cowboy game, as what it says in the book I read, or the article, or the documentary I looked at. Or maybe if I'm feeling it, I believe I have a wonderful time at that football game. The second section is about the tourists in Mexico, first Americans to witness the corn dance. Do you dance, have fun, or film it for social media? Some of my questions have to do with human nature, too. Is it human nature when I see something really cool, I want credit for seeing it? I want to record that video with a corn dance. Maybe in the moment, I paint my face, I drink a little, I dance, but then it's over, I remember. But if I record it with my camera, put it on social media, maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000, 1,000,000 people know that I'm cool, I was at that corn dance. So maybe you could write a paper about needing communal approval, human nature, something like that. Human nature to crave community stamp of approval. And then his third big example is the seashell on the beach, which I think works really well for education. If I'm talking to Alistair, the biology professor, who's quite smart, and I want to be smart, I'll tell him this Walker Percy story about the starfish. I've even encouraged him to use it in his classes. In case you don't remember, you're walking on the beach, you find a seashell, you're an explorer, you show your mom, it's really cool, you take it home, put it on your mantle. But if your biology professor plops it in front of you and says, dissect this for a grade, it's part of the system, it's part of what the man is making you do. Percy would call it consumer packaging. And ultimately, I don't like school. I don't want to do what the man says. I'm not going to pay any attention to school. And he wants you to think maybe what you're doing in school could be interesting. You pick and choose your spots. And then my last question there is schoolwork for the man. Are you in school because you want to learn something, because you want to better yourself? It's you being self-motivated. Or are you trying to please your mom? It's something you have to do to get a better job. And it breaks down to process versus product, which we'll talk about a little later. But are you in school for you, or are you in school because it's what you're supposed to do? You're doing it for the man. When we get to the next section, I put in quotes, good parents take their kids to Disneyland. Sometimes I would start that lecture and say, raise your hand if you've been to Disneyland. And then I will sarcastically tell the students that look around, the kids whose parents took them to Disneyland have good parents. The kids who've never been to Disneyland have bad parents. But my point has to do with like American norms. Like it's part of the system, it's part of the packaging. If you're a little kid, you're supposed to go to Disneyland. And when it gets time to write your paper, number 4, where you talk about your experiences, if you went to Disneyland, feel free to write your essay about going to Disneyland. But I wrote signifiers in American culture, things you have to experience to be normal or rich. If you go to Disneyland, you're normal. If you go to Disneyland, you're rich. And that means something like in our culture. Finding it at college. I think I told you the story in another video clip about the kid at Kent State. When I know times have changed, maybe even more so in the time of COVID. But when I was in college was supposed to be like Animal House, the movie. It was supposed to be a wild party, have fun, like grades weren't as important. But I think obviously in 2020, you need those grades. You got to get that job so you can be a barber and live in Big Spring and have 2.5 kids. I'm being sarcastic and funny, so no offense to barbers in Big Spring. But the college experience. Ultimately, when you're writing these papers, it could be on anything. It could be on Disneyland. It could be on what you think college, ideally what college is when you watch a movie in our media versus what college is when you're actually there. And maybe you stay up all night writing a paper, you go to work, it's really hard, it's really difficult. It's not fun like it would be in like Animal House, the movie. I do sometimes ask my face-to-face students if they're having fun. And I worry, I promise you, when I was in college, I had fun. That's why I stayed 17 years. I had a good time. And sometimes in the face-to-face classes, I'll just check, are y'all having fun? And they're going, So I don't really know, but I hope you're having fun. Ideally, wherever you go, whatever you do, you have a little bit of fun. You know, I did. Grand Canyon in American culture. You think about everything that's been written, every video about the Grand Canyon. It might be over 1 million. So you're one person, your family's going there on vacation. You think, 100 million trillion people have been there. Why do I need to go? How could I ever have a good time if all these other people have gone? It's just another thing like the man is making me go look at. If I'm telling another story, I told you before that in another lecture that I wanted to go because the Brady Bunch went there. My parents took me from Virginia to Arizona, old school, like there really wasn't much cable TV. And in that hotel room, there was about 20 cable TV channels, including the Chicago Cubs. And I wasn't used to baseball being on a Tuesday. My parents had taken me to Arizona to see the Grand Canyon. I was like in 4th grade. I threw a temper tantrum. I had a clicker and 20 TV channels, and I threw a little temper tantrum because I didn't want to go to the Grand Canyon. I wanted to have 20 TV channels. So again, that's C-Rob in real time, not doing what he says to do in his lecture. Yeah, and I wrote young C-Rob begged to go because of the Brady Bunch. Optimist, pessimist, I've talked about that before. I think I might cut this off and save it for the second half of this lecture. So I'll start with what is a tourist?